we go. So yeah, it's not a hard process. I'll worry about the graham cracker crust in a little bit. This is the mise en place for that. And all this is butter. I'll melt that in the microwave. And I'm going to mix it together with the brown sugar and the graham cracker crumbs, and I'll just mix it together in a bowl until it's even. And that is a 5-minute thing. As for the bread, this is all part of the bread mise en place. So that's for the challah. But for the cheesecake, this is it right here. And big chunk of cheese. I'm going to go ahead and put that right into the mixer. That's huge. Now, I normally like to leave the cheese out for a while to really soften up. It really does make mixing easier when the cheese is softer, but it doesn't have to be room temperature and super soft. It can be firm out of the fridge. It's just that you have to be a little more diligent when it comes to the process of mixing to make sure you don't get lumps, because the cheese is firm. Cream cheese has a lot of fat in it. It's a high fat cheese, so because of that, you're going to have firmness that you won't have when it's at room temperature. This vanilla, I'm just going to put it in here with my flavorings. This is my orange juice and lemon juice. Let's kind of mix that together. It said to put in the cheese, the sugar, and the flavorings. So you will see right away, this gets stuck to our paddle. And it's going to require a little help from time to time. You just got to take this and pull it off the paddle. And just keep working at it until it softens up a little bit. But after a couple of these times of just removing it from the paddle, it will be, it'll become more like a paste. It'll become softer. Yeah, so I'm just patient with it at first. This stuff's still really cold. It's been out here for a couple hours and still hasn't softened up all that much. There we go. It's getting better now. So I'm going to work in the sugar. And these flavorings. Lemon juice, orange juice, and vanilla. And now that that's all kind of semi-mixed in, I'm just going to go ahead and give it a quick scrape down to make sure everything's off the sides, everything's off the paddle. Now the lemon juice, I squeezed from fresh lemon. Beware of seeds. The lemons have lots of seeds. One year, about 10, 12 years ago, a bunch of students came up to me, and I was working in another lab, and they were like, Chef, you got to try our cheesecake. And they were so proud of their cheesecake. I was like, cool, let me try it. So they brought me a sliver. I didn't want a big piece. They brought me a sliver, and I tried it. In that one piece of cheesecake, I found 12 lemon seeds. They were like, how was it, Chef? How was it? It was good, wasn't it? So it was really good cheesecake, guys. But I found 12 seeds. You know, and they were like, their mouths dropped open. They were like, we're really sorry. How'd that happen? I said, what you should be worried about is not the 12 seeds I found. How many more seeds are in the rest of that cheesecake? But you know that it's easy to do. You'll be juicing and lemon, and there's lots of seeds. All you have to do is just strain it. That's one of the things I brought out here. I have the strainer and I just strained it out to make sure I got all the seeds out. It just will be one of those things. The oranges didn't have any seeds. Okay, so we're on the sugar, the cheese, the flavorings, and it's getting smoother. Once you get to a point where you feel like, okay, it's pretty smooth, I'm pretty happy with that, then we can start looking at working in the eggs. I just want to make sure that I've got my lumps under control before I start adding liquids. So it seems tedious to do this several times, to have to scrape down and start it up again. But believe me, a little bit of time spent now will save you frustration later. And the whole time that you're doing this, the cheese is softening up. It's getting better. Now, what am I looking for? Down here, as I'm looking inside, I'm looking to see if, as it goes around and smears that cheese, is it smooth? Or am I seeing lumps? I'm still seeing a couple small lumps, but it's getting a lot better. So, I'm almost ready to add the eggs. So the good thing about this is that we won't be in any hurry. Once this is mixed, I can then get to things like the crust. I can get to things like the, get my pan ready. And this will be just fine. Okay, so it looks like it's getting pretty smooth. So I'm going to start working in the eggs, just one at a time. I'll work in a yolk and an egg. Initially, it doesn't want to mix in because this is liquid and that's primarily fat. So because of that, the two have to learn to play nice together. One of the things that helps that is the yolk. The yolk has a lot of lecithin in it, which is a natural emulsifier. It's going to make the fat and the liquid play nice together. So I'll throw in another egg. And then I'm going to go ahead and scrape down just to make sure everything's mixed. And you'll see it's just sort of this yellowish, yolky mixture at the bottom. A lot of cheese hanging onto the paddle here. A lot of cheese hanging onto the side of the pan. We'll get all the cheese down here to join the party. And like I say, the yolk really does help because it helps to build that emulsion between the liquids and the fats. So as that comes together as a smooth mixture, right now it's trying to. What I'll do is I'll zoom in here a little bit further. You guys can kind of see what I'm seeing. Okay, so we're going to work in another egg. This was basically about 3 eggs. Yeah, 5.5 ounces. It was about 3 eggs and about 2 yolks. So that's enough thickening power to do the job. There goes my last egg. Now, I still haven't added the cream. The cream is the last bit of liquid. Now all the eggs are in. I'm going to go ahead and scrape this down, make sure any firm cheese that's on the side finds its way down into the center. And the only lumps that are left are kind of soft lumps. They're filled with egg and they're really getting softer. The cheese is getting more supple. So don't worry if it's not as smooth as, you know, as smooth as pudding. It still is pretty cold. But remember that the lumps you're seeing, you're scraping down off the sides, you're getting down that cheese that's firmer. They're soft lumps. You know, they're partly mixed with other ingredients. And you'll see it as you see down in there. You'll start to see little micro lumps that are in there. Not a problem. They're small, and they'll be mixed in as things heat up and as things cook. But it's big lumps that I worry about. So now that that's getting nice and smooth, it's time to work in the cream. I'm just going to go in a steady stream, just working it in. Now don't be worried if you see a lump or two in the cream. I don't know if you see that, but in there's this lumpy stuff. This is fresh cream, but it's so fresh, and it's this particular company. They don't emulsify anything, so it comes out like it would at the farm. It's pretty it's pretty lumpy, surprisingly, but it's okay. It's fresh cream. It's in good shape. I've noticed that about this brand. This brand is a lot like, the cream is a lot like what I used to get when I used to get right from the farm. I spent a lot of years, middle school and high school in Pennsylvania, which is dairy country. You know, out here it's all corn and soybeans, but back there it's all dairy farms. And we used to go right to the farmer and pick up milk, unhomogenized. You know, he'd pasteurize it, he would heat it, but he wouldn't try to homogenize it. And the stuff, the cream would rise to the top, and it was thick like this. It was kind of lumpy. But boy, was it good. Okay, so this mixture has come together pretty nicely now. Everything's in there that's supposed to be in there. One thing I did notice, that's not listed on the recipe, but I always add it to everything in baking and pastry. It's a pinch of salt. It may seem counterintuitive, but it's like adding a little bit of sugar to your tomato sauce. You ever make tomato sauce? You add not a lot of sugar. Some people do. Some people add a cup of sugar. That's crazy. No, a little sugar, like a tablespoon in a whole big batch. But that makes a big difference. A little pinch of salt also makes a difference. And you won't notice it. But when it does, it brings out those subtle flavors. And it's one of those things. It's never on the recipe, but I do it as a matter of practice now. Okay, so some things just to make note of is that as I was mixing, I never took it to high speed. I kept it at a relatively slow speed. I didn't want to get a lot of air incorporated. So I'm going to get all this off the paddle. Because if the air gets trapped in here, it stays. And once it's in there, it's really not much of a way to get it out. So, and you won't know. You won't be able to see it. If I do see any big lumps, I can smash them against the side of the bowl and try to get rid of them. But generally, if they're small and they're soft, I don't worry. So that's my cheesecake filling. That's my mixture. The next step would be to make my graham cracker crust. Yeah, so mine does about 4 minutes in now. I'll give it another 4 minutes of mixing and just It doesn't look like much. It looks like a tiny little ball of dough, but that'll make a loaf of bread, believe it or not. And of course, what makes it so yellow is the egg yolks that are in it, and the honey. Okay, so I'm bumping up the speed a little bit. This will be to help form gluten, help get the wheat to really get those proteins well developed. guys will see, this is the bread dough as I mixed it, and it's basically all mixed. It's just this sort of yellowish dough. As I said, all I did was I took my sponge, I added the rest of the water to it to make it easier to get out of the bowl, threw that in with the eggs, and then threw the rest of the ingredients on top of it. Mixed it for about 8 minutes, and then gave it a little bit higher speed mixing for a minute. And I've got a ball of dough. And that ball of dough, I'm gonna put in a bowl. This bowl has, I just oiled the bowl a little bit so it won't stick to the bowl. And I'm gonna let it sit now. It's gonna sit 45 minutes and just ferment and just rise and do its thing. So I'm gonna cover that and make sure that it doesn't dry out. It's 20 after 9 right now. I figure that in 45 minutes, this will be ready to go into the proof box. Okay, so with my bread dough just sitting there, I'll set a timer for that, and it'll just do its thing for a little while. But when I go to check this, I'm gonna take my thumb and I just press it, and that jiggle tells me a lot. Right now, if there was still liquid cheese in there, it would slosh. You would see it firmer on the edges, but it would slosh in the middle. This is a firm jello jiggle the whole way across, and that firm jello jiggle is exactly what we're looking for. Is that the eggs are set, but they're not hard. You know, we want eggs to set but be moist at the same time. So this will settle down now. It's a little dome. It'll settle down. The doming tells me I got a tiny bit of air inside of it. A little bit got trapped in there, so it did pump a little. I'm hoping as it settles down that it won't crack. But you know, it's always a gamble with cheesecake, right? It's a little gamble. But that jello jiggle tells me a lot. So I'll let that cool down. In the meantime, I've got half an hour before my dough has even had a chance to get started. So I'll let that timer sit there, and we'll come back. Now, when I first started working with breads, I had no idea what I was doing. And the number one mistake I made was shaping. This is what the next stage is of this. This was called bulk fermentation, and we fermented the dough. Now it's had a chance to ferment, so we're going to go into the shaping process. And if you don't shape correctly, what happens is that you end up with big pockets inside your bread. So like I ended up making, and I really blew it. I made like 20 loaves of bread, and they all had big golf ball sized holes in them, and I was really, really discouraged. But I wasn't a baker back then. I was still in the beginning stages. I was only like 21 years old, and I didn't know what I was doing, and I really felt stupid. So I had to learn. So I spent some time really studying it. But basically, here's my dough. It's been fermented. I'm just going to gently pat it down, and it just kind of makes a rough rectangular shape. And all I'm going to do is I'm just going to roll this over about maybe a quarter or a third and give it a good pinch shut, and then roll it over again and pinch it shut. We're basically just rolling it up and pinching it as we go. The last little bit, I just pinch closed, and it makes something like a burrito. And the idea behind that is when you're doing that and you're patting it down, is you're degassing some of the excess bubbles that are in there. They're big bubbles. And that's good. You want the bubbles to be roughly the same size. Then rolling it up like that, make sure that everything overlaps and it comes out nicer that way. So from there, I'm going to take that burrito. I'm just going to place it in the loaf pan, and it's going to grow. And by the time it's done proofing, it'll be rising up above this loaf pan. So it'll about triple in size when it's in the proof box. The proof box, if you're curious, is the big unit down here. We got our cooler, then there's a freezer unit, and then there's the proofer. And the proofer maintains a nice, moist, warm environment for the bread, or for the dough. And you don't need to cover it in the proofer, which is nice. So I'm going to set mine in the proofer and just let it grow. And it might take about an hour, maybe more, maybe a little bit more. But like I said, if yours end up at least getting in the loaf pan, we'll be able to have them all proofing in there, and then when they're ready, I'll put them in the oven in a little while. It's probably more like around, what, by the time they're all done, probably around 12 or so, by the time they're all coming out of the oven. But that's okay. I'll have another class in here at the time. I'll just go and transfer them to the oven and bake them up. So as you're getting ready, just like I said, when I did my bread, I put all my liquids in the bowl first, along with my sponge, and then I threw in my flour, my salt, my sugar, all my dry on top of that, and just mix it for about 8 minutes until it comes together as a nice, cohesive, smooth dough. And then it'll just be set. I set mine in an oiled bowl and covered it with plastic just for about 45 minutes, just to let it do its thing. Based on time, what we're looking at with the clock, we'll probably be right at the point of just putting it in our oil pans by the time we leave. And that's okay, you know. By then our cheesecake should be coming out too. So everything should be just barely on time.